The use of inhalants as a drug is a phenomenon born out of the revolution in chemistry of the 1800s and the boom of the petrochemical industry of the 1900s. The primary substance used by people to get high are derived from hydrogen-carbon molecules produced from the compression of the lignin in trees over millions of years, and then refined and separated from crude oil. However, some inhalants like ether, chloroform, and nitrous oxide are derived from different sources. In the 1840s, these drugs were used as a medical anesthetic for surgery. Ether and chloroform have been widely used as recreational drugs since that time and reached their peak in popularity during alcohol prohibition in the 1920s, at least in the United States, before falling out of favor in the 1930s. Nitrous was a popular party drug in the early 19th century for the British upper class before being used as an anesthetic in 1844. Nitrous is one of the most widely used inhalants in industrialized societies because of its relative harmlessness, long history of medical use up to the present, and easy accessibility in head shops and whipped cream canisters. It is a popular party drug in industrial societies where the nitrous is produced. The inhalants derived from petrochemicals are separated into several categories: aliphatic hydrocarbons, such as propane and butane, aromatic hydrocarbons, such as toluene, and ketones, such as acetone. Butane, propane, and acetone can be found in lighter fluid, spot cleaners, shoe polish, nail polish remover, degreaser, paint thinner, and cooking sprays. They can be inhaled directly or through a rag to filter out particulates. Aromatic hydrocarbons are also derived from petroleum refinement, but are attached to a stable benzene ring, which gives off a sweet smell. The most abused of these are toluene and xylene, found in contact cement, paint thinner, and model airplane glue. Toluene is one of the most destructive of these molecules because it is lipid-soluble and destroys the myelin sheath surrounding the nerve cells. Alkyl nitrites are used medicinally to relieve chest pain or pressure associated with angina and other heart conditions. Poppers are not a widely used inhalant, but are used heavily in some social groups. The male gay culture has embraced this inhalant for decades because of its slight euphoric and stimulating effects, as well as its relaxing effects on the smooth muscles of the body. Inhalants have been a small but consistent subset of drug use since the 1950s, peaking in popularity in the late 70s and 80s with the punk culture. A well-known example of this is the 1970s classic movie Airplane, in which a character uses a spectrum of progressively harder drugs ending with sniffing glue. This is one indication that inhalant abuse is often seen as an extreme form of drug abuse relative to other narcotics. Gasoline contains a suite of the chemicals found in these other inhalants, including aliphatic and aromatic hydrocarbons, naphthalenes, paraffins, N-hexane, and alkenes, and therefore its effects are stronger and its side effects more widespread and destructive. In addition, tetraethyl lead is added in some countries like Australia until 2002 to boost the octane rating of unrefined gasoline, which has side effects similar to these other inhalants and may produce synergistic damage. Inhalant abuse is one of the most prevalent drug use disorders around the world among highly urban, extremely remote, and severely economically disadvantaged populations with broken familial structures. The drugs are legally obtainable, relatively cheap, and available in places that are not well connected to narcotic trade networks. Many times, the group of users forms a surrogate family for the user. Many of these hallmarks for inhalant abuse are associated with indigenous populations. By the 1960s, petrol sniffing was prevalent among adolescents of a number of groups, including Native Americans, Inuit Canadians, Polynesians, Maoris, and Australian Aboriginal. The immediate effects of petrol sniffing include euphoria, relaxation, dizziness, increased libido, aggression, hunger, and ataxia, or loss of control of the body. These are observed as slurred speech, staggered gait, impulsive, and disinhibited behavior that is similar to the drunkenness that occurs with alcohol intoxication. These effects can occur within 3 to 5 minutes and can last for 5 to 6 hours. Larger doses can induce hallucinations, delirium, unconsciousness, seizures, and coma. Sniffing petrol produces abnormalities in the cerebral cortex, cerebellum, hippocampus, basal ganglia, and brainstem. In addition, it has negative effects on the liver, kidneys, bone marrow, peripheral, and central nervous systems, sudden death, hearing loss, and damage to the mucosal membranes of the nose, mouth, throat, and lungs, in addition to other negative side effects. Inhalant abuse by the punk culture of the 70s and 80s was associated with nihilism because of the possibility of nuclear Armageddon. Sniffing petrol provides a rare opportunity for young indigenous people to exert control over their own bodies, and the euphoria, hallucinations, and accompanying elements of risk-taking, excitement, and danger offer access to a different world that accompany petrol sniffing and are equivalent to the experiences of adolescent drug users in urban Western cultures. Alcohol was banned from Aboriginal use from 1837 until roughly the 1960s in Australia, from 1884 to 1985 in Canada, and in the US from 1832 to 1952. Although it was still available from bootleggers, the irregular availability and illegality of alcohol, and the relative prevalence and legality of petrol probably provided the impetus for the practice. The Mount Theo Outstation is a remote rehabilitation facility in the Warlpro Nation. It was started in 1995 as a response from elders to the community sniffing epidemic in Yuendumu. Mount Theo is not only geographically isolated, but also a spiritually powerful healing place with strong links to the dreaming. To take the peer pressure out of sniffing, ringleaders or chronic sniffers were removed and sent bush for a month at a time to give bodies and brains time away from the petrol. Expanding on the Mount Theo model, community attempts to combat the abuse of petrol sniffing have taken a three-pronged approach. This is a reduction in supply by introducing non-aromatic fuels, remote inpatient rehabilitation centers stressing traditional skills and culture, and community engagement and recreation for young people. It has been shown that the implementation of any two of these parts without the third has limited efficacy, and that only the trifecta has produced long-term reduction of use. Reduction of supply and rehabilitation fails to address the lack of recreation and boredom of outstation life. Rehabilitation and recreation diversion programs leaves a large supply available for abusers, and supply reduction combined with recreational diversion programs without rehabilitation leaves addicts without a treatment platform. There are a plethora of community-based and indigenous-run youth diversion, harm reduction, and use prevention programs across Australia now. Efforts have continued since Mount Theo's inception in 1995 to combat petrol sniffing by implementing this threefold approach. The Warlpro Youth Development Aboriginal Corporation has dedicated itself to developing the strength, health, confidence, and leadership of Warlpro youth. This work has broadened greatly over the last decade, beyond the initial crisis of petrol sniffing to any risk, opportunity, or pathway arising for young Warlpro people. Opal fuel, a form of petrol with highly reduced levels of aromatic hydrocarbons, was introduced in a limited rollout in 2005. This followed a failure of the introduction of low aromatic aviation fuel in the 1990s, but which still contained lead. Much more widespread today because of its success, Opal is not stocked in some gas stations because there is a belief by some people, unsubstantiated and propelled by racism, that Opal fuel is damaging to automobiles. Petrol sniffing remains a significant public health problem in remote regions with unpredictable and variable incidents. In addition, the abuse of other volatile solvents and other easily accessible substances continues to grow, therefore signaling the importance of community and government efforts on addressing this issue. However, the combination of this three-pronged approach has led to a reported 87.9% reduction in sniffing in the 17 communities sampled in 2015.